الحمد لله يستعينه واستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله بالحق بشيرا ونذيرا بين يدي الساعة من يطع الله ورسوله فقد رشد ومن يعصهما فإنه لا يضر إلا نفسه ولا يضر الله شيئا. Indeed, all praise due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We praise Him, we thank Him for giving us another beautiful day of Friday, another blessed day of Jum'ah, to be able to worship Him, to be able to remember Him, to be able to connect with Him in ways that we probably have not over the past several years, and yet still being in peace and security, having shelter, alhamdulillah, having food to eat, having hopefully family members to benefit from, to be able to connect with your loved ones online. So alhamdulillah, Allah has given us so much, and this Ramadan has taught us that we can all survive. We can all survive, alhamdulillah, with limited means at times. We can all survive without partying outside. We can all survive without necessarily having huge gatherings, without even being able to go to masjid, which is unfortunate, of course. Alhamdulillah, we can all survive. Allah has shown us that and taught us that through this beautiful Ramadan experience this year. And this is why, of course, we need to think about our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because this Ramadan under lockdown has connected us, hopefully, with God, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we probably have not in a long time. Alhamdulillah, you have all survived 7 days of fasting, and hopefully you had a great time so far. And subhanallah, last 7 nights, 7 or 8 days now of Ramadan have really made me think about so many things, of course, that we take for granted. It also made me think, and hopefully all of us think about things that you and I don't really appreciate at times when we actually have them. And also, more importantly, it has hopefully helped you and I connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and more importantly, to His book, to His message, in ways that probably you had not done at a personal level in quite some time. So my friends, my brothers and sisters, I want to actually shed a few, over the next few minutes, shed some light on our relationship with Al-Quran, with Al-Kitab, with Al-Dhikr, with Al-Furqan. These are some of the names that this book of God, a book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is known by. And I want to share a few reasons why we need to reconnect, and how, of course, we should reconnect. But before that, I want to actually share a few excuses that you and I make often to not connect with this book, and why we keep neglecting this book. So I want to actually start off with an ayah of Quran that you may be familiar with. This is actually, interestingly, in Surah Al-Furqan itself, verse 30. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ يَا رَبِّي إِنَّ قَوْمِ اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا. That basically that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning that on that day, the messenger will complain, will say, Ya Rabbi, O Rabb, my people have abandoned the Quran, have literally, mahjura comes from the word, same root word as hijrah. Literally, they have left, or they have moved away, or they have migrated from. They have abandoned this book. So I want to, inshallah, talk about what are we talking about when we say abandoning this book? Because we don't want to be part of this description that Quran talks about of messenger saying this, that my people have left this book, subhanallah, have abandoned this book. So let us think about our own attitude, our own connection toward Quran, or connecting with Quran and attitude towards Quran, or connecting with Quran in general. And Ramadan being the month of Quran. And who said that? Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself said this. The only time in the Quran where Allah talks about Ramadan is in Surah Al-Baqarah. And we've talked about it a couple of times. And how does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala introduce this month of Ramadan? How does he? There's so many things that could have been said about Shahr of Ramadan, the month of Ramadan. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Shahr Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran. That this is the month in which the book, this book, Quran, this guidance, book of guidance, hudan linnas, that this book of guidance for everybody was revealed. This is the month. It's interesting, before that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked about fasting and why it was prescribed, which was for taqwa, and we've talked about it last week. But now Allah is talking about the connection, the essence of Ramadan, and which was the introduction to Ramadan being that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this book of guidance. So let us talk about very quickly a few reasons why we don't often connect with the Quran as much as we should. What are some reasons we give to ourselves? What are some excuses that you and I make at times, unfortunately? So let us think about those. Number one is we're just too busy. Well, if anything, COVID-19 has taught you and I is that all this, idea of you and I being busy, is a construction of our mind. It is something that we tell ourselves and tell the world and tell our family members, which may or may not be true. Most of the time, it's not true. Most of us, when we say we are busy, it just simply means it is not your priority. Means something else is a priority, and that's why you're too busy to attend to anything, whether it's family affairs, whether it's reading Salah on time, or studying Quran, or helping someone in need, whatever it may be. It's just simply not a priority. So that's typically the reason why we are not paying attention. So that's number one excuse, which really is a very problematic excuse. We are too busy. Well, everybody's got same number of hours, exact same number of minutes every day. It's all about how you prioritize. It's all about how you juggle those boxes of time that Allah has given you, and what you fill those boxes of time with, which you're going to open on the day of judgment and be surprised to see that most of those boxes of time are going to be filled with junk, filled with stuff that was meaningless and useless, things that you really were not a priority, things that you will never regret at the time of your death of not actually being able to do. So subhanAllah, think about that. The number one excuse that you and I have is we're too busy. Number two, second excuse we give to ourselves really for not studying the Quran is that we are is the fact that we realize and we know that we're too distracted. We're too distracted with all this beautiful technology that we have access to, all the wonderful things that are pulling us away from things that matter. And this is what we need to rethink. It's now time to rethink our lifestyle. And that is how are we using this technology? And how often are we using this for actually something beneficial? Or are we just, the moment you start even looking at something beneficial, even on your devices, that you are constantly bombarded with stuff that is, basically, distracting you and taking you away from higher things in life, whatever it may be. So think about that. How is, if our device is buzzing throughout listening to khutbah or throughout prayers or throughout family time, there's a problem how we are using our device, or how we're using all technology around us. So think about that, inshallah. So that is another reason why we are unable to connect with Quran often. Third reason is that we think to ourselves that Quran has no relevance and no benefit for us. Has no benefit, no relevance. It's an ancient scroll, it's an ancient book, it's ancient manuscript. What relevance does it have for me and my life? And well, it won't if you don't take time to ponder, if you don't take time to study, you don't even think about what does this message of God mean to me right here, right now, living in Canada, living in the US, living in the UK, living in wherever Allah has placed you. Think about that also, because it won't have relevance if you don't even take the time to study it, study the language of it, study the beautiful meanings and the pearls of wisdom and gems that it has to offer. And what is amazing is that majority of the Quran deals with practical issues of life. When it comes to issues of fiqh that are ever talked about, they are about human relationships. It's about looking out, pondering over signs of God. It's about so many things that are so simple and practical that you can start implementing today. It's about morality. Study this over and over again. How many times Allah is talking about moral issues, about social issues, about issues of belief in God. These are all practical things that you and I can, inshallah, benefit from. But it won't be relevant if you have other books and other sources competing with you, competing for your attention. Whether it's fiction and non-fiction or anything else that you are consuming on daily basis, whether reading or watching. You can't, you won't be able to compete with Netflix because of all the entertainment it has to offer. But it can become an incredibly powerful companion that will even entertain you in ways that you have never imagined, in spiritual ways, in moral ways, that it will connect you and take you to a higher level that you've never thought of. It'll give you a high that probably you never had before in your life. And that spiritual high, an intellectual high even, that many of us and our souls are yearning for. Fourth reason we give to ourselves is, well, Quran is in Arabic. I don't understand it. That's not my language. Well, guess what? Some of the masters of Quran, some of the greatest masters of Hadith, some of the greatest narrators of Hadith and compilers of Hadith, some of the greatest scholars of fiqh and Aqidah throughout Islamic history who are not Arabs. Who was Imam Bukhari? Who are all these great people that you, Imam al-Tirmidhi, and so on? I mean, so many names you can list. They were not Arabs, and yet they have mastered the language. And not everybody's expected to become a scholar here. This is not about being a scholar. It's about being able to understand at least enough to be able to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And remember, this is a journey. Quran is a journey. Quran is a journey. Learning Arabic language is a journey. Nobody will ever become perfect. And this is the beauty of it. The more you study it, the more you realize you don't know. This is the beauty of this book. And so once you start committing to it, you take the first step, Allah will give you, empower you in ways that you had never been empowered before. But it will not be an easy journey. There will be ups, there will be downs. It's gonna be a lot of fun at times. There's gonna be a lot of times you're gonna have to juggle priorities and rethink your priorities. But it is a lifelong commitment once we get started on it. So giving this excuse that Quran is in Arabic is really not an excuse, because there's so many Arabs who still don't understand the Quran, and there's so many non-Arabs who understand Quran more than the original Arabs even did at times. So think about that for a moment. Number fifth reason we give to not connecting with Quran is that Quran is for scholars to study. What do I have to do? Me being a layperson, layman or laywoman, what do I have to do when it comes to studying the Quran? Let them study it. Well, Quran did not come for scholars. Quran came for scholars to help us understand and interpret, absolutely. But Quran came for us to reconnect, to be connected, to be empowered with, draw our willpower from, to draw our strength from, and more importantly, for our guidance. And we'll talk about this, inshallah, in a moment. So Quran is not just for scholars, Quran for every one of us. The moment you start taking that first step, Allah will open doors and unlock its keys in ways that you can never imagine. And again, remember, last week we talked about Quran, people of taqwa. Well, one of the keys to opening the Quran to your life and to your spirituality and to your personal development is taqwa itself, God consciousness. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself talks about Hudal lil Muttaqin right at the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah. First chapter, second chapter, as you open the Quran, Allah is mentioning Dhalikal Kitab. That is a book right here for you, and it is for you and you and you who has taqwa. That's what it is. Those are the real beneficiaries of the Quran. And the last reason I want to mention for not connecting the Quran is that we simply have not tasted the joy of studying the Quran at times. That's why. Meaning, the reason why we are not obsessed with studying Quran yet is because we have not tasted what it feels like. You have no idea what you're missing out on. You have no idea, perhaps, what you could be enjoying today and tomorrow and the rest of your life once you actually start studying the Quran at a personal level, inshallah, on a daily basis. And part of that conversation that we're having, let us think about our attitude towards Quran in general. How do we use the Quran? So, well, you can say, no, I do use the Quran. I do a lot of things with the Quran. Well, let's discuss that for a minute. What are some of the ways that we use, and sometimes, I will say sometimes, not always, sometimes abuse the Quran as well, right? Today, Quran is being abused by us Muslims, and of course, the people who do not want Islam to be shared with others, who do not want to see Islam, a word of Islam, to be heard anywhere, a word of Quran to be heard. So Quran is being abused. We have seen some horrific things in the past, where, of course, people burning the Quran, na'udhu billah, people disrespecting the Quran, disrespecting the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But I mean, a lot of that happens in our own community sometimes, where we disrespect, and as we talked about, neglect, and even at times abuse the Quran. So I want to share a few things, how Quran is often used in our community, in our families, even at times, and at personal level, how we are using the Quran today. And sometimes, it is something that, it is actually a good thing, the way we are doing it, but it's neglecting the sole purpose of Quran's revelation. So number one is barakah, or blessings. So often Quran is used for blessings, for barakah, at special events like weddings, maybe sometimes at the, at somebody's death, even at times. And these uses of the Quran are okay if, depending on how we are doing it, with what intention we are doing it, and as long as we understand that, Quran has a higher purpose than just being used for blessings. Of course, Quran is full of blessings. Allah himself says, Mubarak, Mubarak. That actually this is, in fact, we'll go into that verse in a minute, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that this book is full of blessings. So there's no doubt about this, but we cannot be just limiting Quran to its blessings. So that is number one. Number two is we use this for being rewarded. Reading and tilawah for reward. Absolutely. Quran is a month of tilawah, and we should read it. In fact, more than ever, during COVID-19, this is the time to read Quran more than ever. Making commitment to finish the Quran in this month would be amazing if you're able to do, inshallah. It would be incredible. In fact, more than once. This is the month you should be memorizing more Quran as well, inshallah. So yes, for reward, and we know the rewards are immense, especially in the month of Ramadan, it multiplies, inshallah. So keep reading, but that's not the only reason why Quran was revealed. It has a higher purpose. Number three is Quran is often used as a source of healing, of Shifa, for both physical as well as spiritual ailments. And yes, absolutely, Quran is a Shifa. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself actually talks about this. And, if you have time, you'll actually, inshallah, go into that as well. That this is a shifa for what's the ma fi sudur, what is in the chests of people, of human beings. Definitely it is. But Quran is often only used for shifa. Many people, just go to the Quran when they're ill, when they're spiritually ill, when they think that there's some issues of, God forbid, of possession or ayn or sihr or magic, all of that. And sometimes that's the only reason why, or only time people turn to the Quran, and that is of course problematic. And number 4 is for studying the Quran to prove its scientific miracles. So a lot of times people go for an intellectual exercise to the Quran. This idea that Quran has scientific miracles and proofs for every scientific discovery and invention ever. Well, yes, Quran has some amazing gems which were discovered, some of which were just discovered in this 19th and 20th century, thanks to advancements in technology today, that we're able to now see what Quran already had said, no doubt about it. But again, if that's the only reason why you're going to Quran, there's a problem, because Quran will not have every single scientific proof or scientific miracle in it. And Quran is not a book of miracles. Quran is not, it is definitely a book of miracles, but not of scientific miracles. It's an ayat. Ayat are miracles. Every ayah is a miracle, but it's not a book of science. And it may disappoint you or some scientists if you don't find that one little piece of evidence that you may be looking for, because that's not what it is. It is a book for us to ponder upon, to be able to connect with the source of all these scientific miracles, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So again, intellectual exercise is good, but if again that's all we are limiting it to, there's a problem. And we are sometimes go to it for source of knowledge and source of cultural understanding, and teaching our kids about history, about stories of the prophets and the previous nations. Of course, every story has a lesson. But again, it's not a book of history. Even the Quran is full of incredible history, but it's not a book of history. And if that's the only thing that we go back to it for, then we have to think about how we're using this book, inshallah. And sometimes Quran is really, at times, sadly, it's just used, and I would say sometimes abused even, as really a background entertainment. People put the Quran on just before a party starts, or just on the background of something, some event, or you're just getting bored and you put it on. And alhamdulillah, there's no harm. And of course, Quran playing, in fact, the more Quran we play, inshallah, in our homes, the better it is. But again, how are we behaving during the recitation, and what are we doing, especially right before or right after, right? If again, the idea of playing the Quran is really for blessings and simply or ritual, then again, we need to rethink about how are we using and sadly abusing the Quran at times. So I wanted to actually get into really a few reasons why we need to reconnect with the Quran, inshallah, especially the coming days that we have. Alhamdulillah, 1 week is gone. We still have 3 weeks to go. And this is the time to work on our relationship and with connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and specifically the Quran. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this month a month of a new journey, a new chapter in our lives when it comes to our relationship with the Quran and with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there are two essential relationships with the Quran, as Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah mentions. And actually many scholars talk about this. In fact, they talk about other things as well, but the two critical ones. One is tilawa, which we do hopefully a lot of, the recitation, the Arabic recitation of the Quran in this month. But the other one is tadabbur. And that's what we need to be asking ourselves, how often and how much are we doing in these months of Quran? But actually, before I get into that, one more thing I want to actually very quickly mention is when I mentioned mahjur, Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah, one of the great scholars of the past, mentioned five ways that we actually abandon the Quran, how we make it mahjur, as the ayah talked about. How do we abandon it? How do we migrate from it and move away and do hijrah from it, literally? right? So he said, number one is not listening to the tilawah and believing in it. So we may be listening to the tilawah of the Quran and recitation, but we don't believe in it even. Well, it's a good, nice background music almost, God forbid. And that is a problematic behavior. Number two is not acting by and respecting Allah's commands of halal and haram in it. So yes, I believe in the Quran, but I'm not really respecting in my own behaviors on daily basis when it comes to its commands about halal and haram, things that we should be doing or should not be doing. Number three, not accepting Quran as a judge in all aspects of our lives, whether primary or secondary aspects of our lives, meaning that there is no relevance to my life. That's what it basically comes down to, unfortunately. Number four, not reflecting and pondering over Quran's meanings, meaning there's no desire to study this book, no desire to study its language, no desire to study what it has to offer. And the last one is not using the Quran as a healing for our moral and spiritual diseases, meaning that this idea that we don't realize that Quran has actually a cure for our own moral and spiritual diseases, all forms of issues of morality that are prevailing in our society, all immoral behaviors in our own communities. Every single one of them has some solution in the Quran for us. And that's basically what Ibn Qayyim talks about when he says, this is how we do, how we become people who are people of mahjura that the Quran talks about. So I wanted to actually go into a few reasons why we need to go back and start studying the Quran. Number one is Quran is and I mentioned some of these, so I'll just quickly go over them. I already mentioned some of them. Number one is Quran is a living miracle of Islam. If there's anything that is still a living miracle of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a real proof of your faith is the actual text of the Quran in Arabic, not in English, not in Urdu, not in Turkish, not in Swahili or any other language that you and I are used to speaking. Quran in itself is in Arabic, is revealed in Arabic for a reason. And this is why when you start studying the book of Allah in Arabic as much as you can, inshallah, that's when you start experiencing that miracle more than anything else. Of course, guidance itself is a miracle, but every verse of the Quran is called an ayah. An ayah literally means a miracle. So that's what we should think about when this should be a good reason, an impetus for us to actually go to the Quran and start studying it, so that you can uncover and reveal that miracle that may be hidden from you at times because you're not going into the Arabic text and understanding as much yet. So that's number one. Number two is, and second reason we should start studying the Quran and take it more seriously, is that it is the living guidance for us. It is a manual of life. And think about this, anything, any product, any technology, any gadget that you get hold of, it comes with a manual for a reason, right? Nowadays, many of us go to YouTube or Google. All of that is good. You refer to something to figure out how to make things work. You refer to something to see how to connect with it, subhanAllah, right? So how to make it work, how to operationalize it. So think about this. How can you be living your entire life, 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, whatever life Allah has given you, without actually going back to that manual to see how to live this life, how to develop those relationships, how to maintain those relationships with community, with family, with people around us, with humanity, and with God himself. How come we're not going back to that manual, that book of guidance, subhanAllah? And this is why, one of the oft repeated names that Allah himself uses in the Quran is what? Names of Quran, al-dhikr, that it is a reminder. This book keeps reminding you about yourself first and about your relationship with Allah, with a relationship with community, relationship with others, constantly over and over again. That's what the purpose of this book is to guide us in the right direction in every aspect of our lives. But it has to start right here. We have to start thinking about it that way. And it's amazing that you find so many people, especially who are new to Islam or who converted to Islam after studying the Quran for maybe sometimes for years or sometimes maybe for months. They will tell us that every time they go back to the Quran, every time they open this book, it was as if Allah was, gently reminding them about all the faults they had in their lives in a very gentle way. Allah is pointing out the things that they should be doing or should not be doing. And today, if you go back to the Quran, you should feel the same way. Any one of us, Muslims, even non-Muslims, they would realize that the things, how far we have gone from the right guidance at times. So this is a manual of life, and it has a beautiful way of bringing us back to life, back to Allah's way, back to the Quranic way, inshallah. So that's number two. Number three is that Quran itself came for reflection. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself says in Surah Sa'ad, for instance, in verse 29, لِيَدَّبَّرُوا آيَاتِهِ وَلِيَتَذَكَّرَ أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ, so that people can do tadabbur, can contemplate and reflect on this ayat, and وَلِيَتَذَكَّرَ أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ, and it is a reminder for people who are of deep understanding. So really it's a reminder for us if you develop a deeper understanding, inshallah. And there's so much that I can actually say, but it's amazing that as you reflect more and more about the Quran, the more you get immersed in it, and you never get bored. It's a guarantee. Quran will never bore you if you are actually studying this with sincerity and to actually with the intention of changing your life and hopefully changing the lives of other people. Number four, Quran is a personal message to you from Allah. Think about this as a personal letter. Every time you open even a random page of the Quran, you'll find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking something directly to you. I remember there was a brother, after one of my khutbas, he came to me and he said that, he was at the lowest point in his life. He had legal problems, financial problems, family problems. SubhanAllah, his life was ruined. I mean, complete, utter ruin. I've never seen probably somebody this low at such a low point in his life, the way he was, subhanAllah, at that time. And I remember he said that the night before, he randomly picked up Quran, a page of the Quran, and he started reading. And he said, I had tears flowing through my eyes, down my cheeks instantly. Because he said, the moment I started reading, I said, SubhanAllah, Allah is talking to me right now. This is Allah's message. This is exactly what I needed. And he said, every time he goes to the Quran, Allah is telling me something to do this subtly, sometimes directly, sometimes subtly. But it is a clear, direct message for us to think about. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to you. And this is why it is said that if you want Allah to talk to you, then read the Quran. And if you want to talk to Allah, then you do what? You do dua and you do salah. You do prayers. Salah and dua are ways you talk to Allah. And you want Allah to talk to you, well, Allah is talking to you 24/7 through this book of messenger. But the point is, how will you know what is Allah saying if you're not understanding what it's saying? SubhanAllah, think about this. Think about this. If you loved, especially back in the days, people can relate it to more, but even today, let's say if you had somebody, a loved one, who loved you so much, who lived maybe across the world somewhere, your grandmother, let's say, and she writes to you a letter in, let's say, in Urdu or in Arabic, and you did not understand it. You don't understand the language. She writes it, she puts her heart into it, she spends probably hours putting it together, writing it, sealing it, and sends it off to you. You receive the mail, and you know you love her, she loves you so much. The moment you receive the letter, what would be your reaction? You would want to right away not only open it carefully with respect, you would want to unfold it, and you want to see what it looks like, you want to see what color the ink is, you want to see their handwriting, and then what? Guess what? You're going to get stuck. You won't know what to do next because you don't know what it means. So then you're probably going to run to somebody, a relative of yours, maybe your own parents who understand how to read it, who know how to read it, or you go to maybe somebody in the village, depending on where you may be, to help you understand. Maybe you don't know how to read even in general, right? So nowadays, same thing could be applicable to email. You may receive an email in a language or in a way that you probably don't understand, or message on Facebook or whatever it is. And you would go and run until You would not rest until you understand what it means. Is this how we look at Quran? Think about this. Every morning, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sending you a love letter in the Quran. A love letter for you directly, for you to connect to, for you to understand. And Quran is full of dialogue. Every bit of Quran, subhanAllah, is full of dialogue. So every day there's an opportunity for us to understand what Allah is saying to somebody else, but the message is for you, directed at you, inshallah. Number 5, Quran is a gift to you. So if somebody gives you a gift, how do you treat it? Do you just throw it away? Or do you just leave it by the curbside outside your house? Do you just put it up on top of a shelf and just let it collect dust? Or just leave it outside if it is, let's say, perishable item, and let it rot? How do you deal with food? How do you deal with, I know we're fasting, probably thinking about food all the time. How do you deal with the gift or something precious? You value it, you cherish it, you save it, you make sure it doesn't collect dust, you make sure that it doesn't get water damage, you make sure that you preserve it. And more importantly, you make sure you use it and benefit from it as much as possible when somebody, a loved one, gives you a gift. So think about Quran as a gift from Allah directly to you and I, inshallah. Think of Quran, another beautiful analogy some scholar gave, which I think it really sticks in my mind, is think of Quran as an app. When was the last time, most apps, or many apps nowadays, you can actually show you when was the last time you logged in, when was the last time you actually opened it, right? So think about the Quran as an app. And of course, nowadays, Quran is an app. Of course, Quran is not an app. Quran is in an app, right? So think about this. When was the last time, if you were to go to any app, especially a Quran app, and if it shows you today, when was the last time you opened it? What should our reaction be? And this is between yourself and Allah. Ask yourself, when was the last time you opened that document or that app? If it says May 2019, there's a problem. If you did not open that book to study, especially, then we need to rethink. So we need to make sure that that app is always on. And inshallah, we're always connecting. So every time you go to that app, you are reminded that, alhamdulillah, I went back to this app. It shows last time you were there was maybe 24 hours ago, maybe 48 hours ago, maybe 5 hours ago. At least, inshallah, we should aim to achieve that. And the last example I want to give, analogy, and the reason for us, number 7, seventh reason why we should connect with Quran more often than ever, is Quran is a book of surprises, full of mysteries, full of inspiration. And it's like a treasure box that is hidden at the bottom of an ocean. So first you're going to have to dive, and that diving will require effort. It requires preparation. It requires some studying and some learning. All of that is going to be required, but it's going to be a journey. The more you dive, the more you're going to learn. And then once you get to that treasure box, at the bottom, the chest box, at the bottom of the ocean, you're going to start digging. And the more you're going to dig, the bigger, the more beautiful the gems are going to be. And another similar analogy, which was given by Abdullah Yusuf Ali, may Allah have mercy on his soul. He was arguably one of the greatest scholars of Quranic translations, of course, or one of the greatest translations of Quran in English language. He said that learning Quran and studying Quran is like climbing a peak, climbing a mountain. He said, the more you go up, the more you climb, the more incredible and the more beautiful and the more panoramic the scene is going to be. So he said, until and unless you take the journey and you go to the peak, the summit of the peak of that summit, peak of that mountain of studying the Quran, until you do that, you have no idea what you're missing out. You have no clue what a breathtaking view and experience you're missing out on. Especially, it's more true when it comes to studying the Quran. So brothers and sisters, I want to inshallah end by sharing a couple of things, a couple of ways that I want to, that will inshallah help us start studying the Quran. I don't have too much time to talk about how to study the Quran, but I will just share a few quick things. that you can start doing right away. And not that any of this is new. I'm sure you are. Just a reminder to myself. And this is more about self-study. And there's so much more that can be talked about. Number one is to get a good translation of the Quran in the language that you are, of course, comfortable with. And also get hold of a good commentary of the Quran or a tafsir of the Quran as well. And start off, every time you go to the Quran, start off by studying the actual Arabic words themselves, whatever little you know, and start memorizing the vocabulary and start detecting the words that you can actually understand first. And then try to understand and get an idea and a feel for what this ayah is talking about. So if you already know 3 of the words out of 10 in a verse, then at least you have an idea what this ayah is talking about. Is this not about you start interpreting the Quran? Absolutely not. This is for your own personal study. So start studying the Arabic words first. Then start looking at the translation in the language that you feel comfortable with. See what every verse is saying, and then see what every verse is saying something directly to you, inshallah, as well. And then start looking at, after you start looking at the commentaries of credible scholars in the language that you're comfortable with. Look at what context these verses were revealed in. What did the early scholars of Islam say? What did Allah Himself say about these verses? Maybe in another verse. What did Prophet ﷺ say if there's a hadith about it? What did the Sahaba say, early generation of Muslims? So you understand the context from mostly from the tafsir or the commentary books, and within that you're looking at the historical context first, but also context of the verses within the text itself. What verses come before it? What verses come after? So start thinking about sort of this holistic view of the ayat and the revelation itself in general that you are studying. And then start, after you do that, then start pondering over the implications and application of these verses for you and us today, inshallah. Whatever lessons you can gain and whatever lessons you can glean from these that you extract from these verses, then you start thinking about this. And then if you need to verify something, there are sometimes complicated verses and complex verses in the Quran or messages, then definitely make sure you verify with a scholar. Make sure you go to somebody who is qualified to actually help us understand. And this is where the second last point I want to share, and that is, this is where basically collective understanding and learning from scholars and with scholars would help. This is where, when you start doing your own personal journey with the Quran, then you start also collectively studying, collective studying with others. It could be in the form of a halaqah with a qualified scholar, or maybe some people who are knowledgeable. It could be an online tafsir program. It could be, of course, in the masjid with an imam or a hadith scholar who is teaching, of course, not during COVID-19, but online. There's a lot of options, alhamdulillah. But the second last point, that I want to mention is all of this is going to be critical for us to start taking those steps in the journey, but also start taking very critical steps in studying the Arabic language itself. And my suggestion is not to start with grammar, because this is where a lot of us get demotivated, a lot of us get lost. Start with, and this is a proven way of studying any language, start with vocabulary. But grammar has to come in gradually. Grammar has to be part of it. But start focusing on vocabulary of Quranic language. The more and more you start learning the Arabic words, inshallah, the more and more you're going to be able to understand this beautiful message and this beautiful book, inshallah. So, and then join some sort of Arabic language course where you're studying Arabic, you're studying grammar, you're studying vocabulary, you're studying all sorts of complex things that come within any language. And start that journey. It will be a lifelong journey, perhaps, but it will be a worthwhile journey. It will change your life in ways that you probably had never thought of. And the last thing that I'm going to mention is make a sincere attempt to study the Quran, meaning starting tonight, make a clear intention, and then and a sincere dua to Allah, that Allah opens the world of Quran for me, that Allah open this book to me and unlock its secrets for life, for my life and the life of other people, inshallah. Brothers and sisters, I end inshallah by asking you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with the most beautiful of his names, to bless us with the most deepest and most beautiful understanding of the Quran. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unlock its doors of understanding of his fahm for all of us. That Allah make us one of those who are yearning to learn your book in ways you have never done before. Oh Allah, help us start a new chapter when it comes to our relationship with you in this beautiful month of Ramadan. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك يا مصرف القلوب صرف قلوبنا على طاعتك اللهم اهدنا الصراط المستقيم اللهم سهل لنا صراط المستقيم اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار اللهم اشف مرضانا ومرضى المسلمين اللهم ارحم موتانا وموتى المسلمين اللهم عافي مبتلانا ومبتلى المسلمين اللهم ارفع عنا بلاء والوباء اللهم أخلص أعمالنا اللهم أخلص نياتنا اللهم زين قلوبنا بالإيمان اللهم زين أخلاقنا بالقرآن لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إنا كنا من الظالمين ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Jazakumullah khairan. Thanks everybody for tuning in once again to Sound Vision's virtual Khutba series today. If there are any comments or questions, we have very limited time. I would be happy to share. Otherwise, you're more than welcome to message us. Just FYI, right after this, we have another great inshallah, another virtual khutbah coming up by Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid in about 10 minutes. So as well as in about 10 minutes time after that, there is going to be another message or virtual khutbah, 2 hours after that, another virtual khutbah by by Dr. Ahmed Murad. So please tune in. Also, every day at 5 p.m. Eastern or 4 p.m. Central, there is a daily reminder, Quran reminder called Quran Today by Dr. Ahmed Murad on Sound Vision Foundation's Facebook page. So please make sure you tune in and connect, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan, everybody. There is a question: which program would you suggest to learn word-to-word meaning of the Quran? Good question, and I know who's asking, so maybe I will share with you a couple of options. There are a whole bunch of them. Options out there. It's just that I don't know specifically this one that I would recommend right now, but I would be happy to, inshallah, send you some options. There are some good online, programs and classes. Alhamdulillah, many institutions are offering now those kinds of programs. But I would be happy to actually, inshallah, share that with you later on. Somebody's asking, how many rakats would you pray after khutbah? This is, of course, something we always talk about this or remind everybody that after or before, depending on which time zone you're in, every day on Friday, please make sure make sure that you are praying 4 rakats of Zuhur Salah. There's no Jum'ah Salah at home or otherwise in such circumstances because masajid are closed. So we are highly recommending, of course, everybody in Jama'ah at home, hopefully, if you have a family, make sure you pray 4 rakat of Dhuhr with the family or by yourself at home, inshallah. If there are any other comments, thank you once again, those of you who have shared some very good, beautiful messages of thanks and gratitude. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all for watching, and inshallah, you continue, keep hanging in there. You still have 3/4 of the month of Ramadan to benefit from. So inshallah, let us make sure we take full advantage of the next few days that we have left, inshallah. And look forward to seeing you again, everybody. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.